What's going on, everybody? Patrick Auger here with Mr. Matthew Wells, Mr. Drake Riggs, and we're here to talk about some recent comments that the UFC president Dana White made in regards to lightweight champion, who's still lightweight champion, Khabib Nurmagomedov. And he said he was going to meet with him this week and, quote, I'm going to press him as hard as I can for one more. Meaning he's going to try and get another fight booked with Khabib. Obviously, if you haven't heard or you're just joining us and you're new to the MMA scene, Khabib has retired. He said he did so due to a promise to his mother, and he wasn't going to, do that 30-0 that was originally talked about with his father when his father was still alive. He's hung up the gloves, and now Dana's really pushing for at least one more. I got to ask, guys, one, how feasible is this? And two, if he does come back, who's he going to fight? So let's start out with how feasible is this? Do we really think Dana's going to convince Khabib to come back? And I'll throw it to you first, Mr. Wells.
I think it's possible, but at the same time, I think it's very disrespectful to keep pressing Khabib. Let's go back through the archives and pull up any number of time Dana White has said at a press conference or an interview, if you have one foot out of the door and you think you're done, you should be done. He said that, I don't know, at least 100 different times. Khabib has proven that he said he's done. The 2020 was not a good year for him, personal life-wise. He lost his father. His mother wished him to stop competing. And as of right now, it seems like he's still very much wanting to stay on the sidelines for now. If he comes back a couple of years from now, then that's on his own volition. But I think it's pretty disrespectful for Dana to keep pressing him like that after he's already expressed what he wants to do right now.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine looking at it, that this isn't Dana really pressing much harder than he normally would. Especially, as you said, multiple times he said, if you think you're retiring, then you should probably hang him up. And he's been okay with that. He has mentioned in other instances, right? When Nunes talked about retiring, he was like, I'll kill her if she retires. Like, we just got a whole bunch of stuff lined up for her. There are instances when he doesn't want that to happen. I don't know if it's coincidence or not that, Russia had an explosion in viewership for Khabib's last fight at UFC 255 and that they're trying to take a large portion of that market as well as the Chinese market and trying to get, Asia and that whole region. So I don't know, Drake, does that maybe play into this at all? Just a little bit?
A little bit, of course, I would say so. It's a pretty big part of the world, and Khabib is very popular and everything. So it's like, it makes sense why Dana would absolutely, want to keep Khabib around. He's one of the most popular fighters on the planet right now. Very unique, drawing power that he has. But at the same time, I totally agree with Matt. It's just kind of ridiculous and quite disrespectful considering, especially in the case of Khabib, I think, with everything that he's had to go through recently and how this is a family thing for him. It's not like he's just like, yeah, I beat everybody, whatever. Like, yeah, that's a part of it too, but that's not really the big thing. He could keep fighting if he wanted to, and I'm sure he still kind of does. It kind of seems like that way, but he's very respectful of his family's wishes and everything. He's not just he doesn't take that stuff lightly, as we've seen, and why would he in general? And the fact that Dana is so. It's not surprising that Dana is being this way and everything. We saw how he glossed over things in that media video, which I think has been removed since, at least I heard, which is kind of funny. Glossed over the fact that some lives were lost, and one in particular that was very close to Khabib and everything. And, he said he would respect that at the time, and he did. But then it's just like, all right, it's over now, man. We want you back. And the thing about it is, too, like, okay, of course, it makes sense for Dana to want him back. Like I said, from a promoter standpoint, you want this guy, you want your superstars to generate money for you, all that stuff. But there's like only one person Khabib can fight left, right? It's got to be from his standpoint, GSP. That's like all he wants right now. And that fight, I don't know if it's realistic anymore. I think we've kind of missed that boat on, making that happen. And GSP recently said too, he misses winning, doesn't really miss fighting. Of course, he misses that feeling of winning. Who wouldn't when you're as good as he was? But he's not exactly chomping at the bit to make this happen anymore either. Seemed like he was a little bit more interested, a couple of years back or whenever, but that just doesn't feel all too likely now. And you got to think, if they were to actually put the wheels in motion for that, GSP's retired. And what I mean by that is he's out of the testing pool. So if he's going to come back, he's got to wait 6 more months. So whenever, let's say they decide to, okay, we want to make this one happen now, and they decide that in like 2 months. All right, but then we got to wait an extra 6 months for GSP to get back and ready. Then you got to book whenever that's going to happen. It just makes it take a lot longer than, it would if he was actually still up in the air, like maybe some fighters like a Cejudo or somebody who's, been talking recently. So from that standpoint, that seems like the only thing Khabib would want at this point. Of course, we would love to see Khabib versus Oliveira, right? Who wouldn't want to see that? Or Khabib versus all these new options, like Chandler getting in the mix if he can win his way. There are some cool, new, exciting lightweight matchups for Khabib. But I don't think he really cares about that anymore. It's more about the 30-0, the perfect one is to beat many people's GOAT and further establish himself as the GOAT. He has nothing left to prove. And I mean, he doesn't have anything left to prove right now, but that's the last thing he could possibly do, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things he said time and time again, it's about legacy for him. He doesn't want to come back and fight McGregor or Poirier. He's already beaten them soundly. He says, why would I come back for this? He said money's not really the driver here. It's about legacy. And GSP has always been that fight for him. It always has. GSP, as you mentioned, wanted to do this a couple of years back, but it really seems that window's closed. I think with USADA, you could end up doing one of those exemptions, right, that they did for Brock Lesnar to bypass that. But I don't know that they would, because, again, it would take GSP probably some time to get ready and into a full camp and to arrange the fight, especially with Ramadan coming up, which, Khabib will not. He multiple times he's fought in the fall specifically because he observes Ramadan. He's very devout about that. He's not going to break that even for a GSP fight. So you're at a point where, you could maybe line that up in the fall if all the stars aligned. But even recently in the interview, I think it was either an interview with the Schmo or the fan Q&A where Dana was asked about GSP versus Khabib and essentially said, no, we're not working on that. We haven't even tried to work on that. He's misled us before. He could be trying to do that in the background. But to me, I would agree that that's really the only fight that maybe gets Khabib to come out of retirement. So I think at this point, if he did come back, my money, again, is you have to have GSP or it's a no-go. Drake's kind of voiced his opinion on that. Mr. Wells, are you in agreement with us here?
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. I mean, we've seen this thing like with Dana time and time again, where it's like, he will try to play a little bit of misdirection. I forget which press conference it was, but it was at one of those seasonal ones, I believe, where right out of the gate, like everyone, I wish I remember what fight it was, but it was like the first question John Morgan asked was about this potential upcoming fight. I think it probably was a Conor fight. And Dana was like, no, we're not close on it. And like, that was his answer. And then after the questions went around the panel, he was like, oh, and I got one more thing to show you guys. And it was a video package of the Conor fight being announced. So, and then of course that leads to more questions. And, he's going to play this game with us, but sometimes you can really tell when they're not working on something. You can kind of see it, like you can kind of hear his tone, like especially like if it's like on video, and you can kind of understand his mannerisms, because sometimes he seems like he's upset that it's not happening, and other times it's like, no, we're not really doing that, sort of thing, where he's just kind of being dismissive. But just to continue to press Khabib on this thing, it's unfortunate, man. It really is. I would rather see, let Khabib enjoy his retirement for a little bit. And then let's say Conor McGregor goes out there and does something new against Dustin Poirier. Like, I don't know, get a takedown and then beat him by ground and pound. And then he can start all this trash talk about him being a better wrestler. And then that could probably pique Khabib's interest a little bit more if he starts talking about being a wrestler now. And, of course, hey, let me go ahead and shut that argument up and then make a lot of the money that comes along with the Conor McGregor fight, especially considering now that they have fans again, albeit at a limited capacity. So there's a lot of money to be made in the matchups for Khabib. But, like you guys had said already, it's a legacy thing for him. And unless if the money does come into play for some reason, which I don't see it doing, I think we can just expect to see Khabib just watching from the sidelines like us.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most likely scenario if we had to gauge it. And, if you're watching this again, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification button, become part of the elite 10% to get notifications whenever we drop videos. To wrap this one up, boys, let's go ahead and do percentages on if Dana can get Khabib back. So I'm going to go, I'll lead us off. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with I think a 20% chance that he's able to convince Khabib to come back and fight. Mr. Riggs, let's go to you. And Mr. Wells, let's end it with you. So, Mr. Riggs, what's your percentage that Dana gets it done, the negotiator himself?
I really like your 20 there, Pat. I think that's a pretty solid number, I would say. Just because you got to think about this also, like Khabib right now, in his last 2 fights or 3 or whatever since the Conor one, he's one of the highest paid fighters right now in terms of, his base fight salary and everything. Like, I really don't think the guy cares that much about money, considering if he kept fighting, he would only get that much richer, but he's stopping on top when he's at his peak of, one of the highest paid fighters ever at this point, right? At least in this short amount of time where he's gotten this set amount of what is 3 million or whatever. So I don't know what more could entice him, just considering his philosophies and everything. If it's like, I would imagine he'd fight GSP for half of that. He doesn't really care. He's all about, establishing himself as the guy. And if he can't do that, then he's not going to fight anymore. He doesn't need the money. And he just made he changed what the Eagle Fighting Championships or whatever his new promotion thing that he's starting up is, which that'll fill his pockets too just fine. He doesn't care about the money. I truly believe that. Of course, everybody does have a price, but like, how much is Dana really willing to shell out for something that Khabib will agree to opponent-wise? Like, just too many. It's a really hard, puzzle to solve, I think, for Dana. So, and then of course the family stuff involved. So it's just, I might even say 15. I might go a little bit lower than 20 actually, but I like that range a lot.
Solid points. Mr. Wells.
I'm going to go with 29%, which coincidentally is
well done.
I think one thing that we could potentially see being an influence on Khabib is, we see the family stuff being like one of the motivating factors for staying on the side, but let's not forget he also has family that does compete in the UFC. So if they're able to get in his ear, be like, hey, we can have a card together, blah, blah, blah. Maybe Dana has already kind of knocked on that door and gone that route, to try to get them to convince him to. I don't know, maybe. But I think, there could be some enticement there from those guys being like, hey, let's get on the card together. Let's all make some money together. Let's all have fun. Let's all train together. That could be a thing that could possibly come into play. But for now, me personally, like I said, man, just leave the guy alone for a little while. Let him figure things out on his own.
Yeah, I like that. I like that commentary very much, because I think pushing him right now, especially so close to this retirement, isn't going to do much. And just to circle back to the money point real quick as well, got to remember, he had that high base pay, but he was also part of the largest or highest grossing pay-per-view
right
in UFC history before ESPN Plus came along, right? It's a little bit harder to get those pay-per-view points now because you got to go behind the wall. They've just raised the pay-per-view price. It's, it'd be interesting to see how much money he could make if he went ahead and did Khabib versus Conor too. But let us know in the comments if you think Khabib's coming back. If he does, who you think he'll fight or who you'd like him to fight. But at this point, yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and see. But it's a no from us.